Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is John Park and welcome to another tutorial series. For today's demonstration, I'm actually going to be doing a little bit more of a technique painting process here. Very familiar to some of the other videos that I've done in the past, but this time it's just going to be pure painting and just kind of showing you guys my overall process in terms of how I go about starting a painting from an abstract point of view and really building it up. So there's a couple of things that I am going to show you guys, which is just kind of starting off a little loosely. And I have a bunch of textures here that I wanted to just get started with, and just to get a little bit of color to get rid of the white on the canvas. So I'm going to start off with this little painting texture. This is actually a little section from one of Mike Hernandez's paintings that I actually wanted to use because I love the colors in here, and I just thought the arrangements were really pretty. So I'm going to use something like that and basically kind of build it up into something a bit more interesting. All I really want to do here is just kind of start off with a really loose background and just kind of eliminate and just utilize some of the colors here and just kind of get some of these nice textures in, just to kind of see what kind of cool tones and stuff that we can get from this. That's all I'm really going for right now. I mean, this nice yellow here, this is pretty cool. I mean, before we kind of had like the same kind of, painting that I did on this other one, where I had kind of a lighter ledge, but I'm thinking this might be kind of cool. And I'm gonna go, really loose here. I just want to use like just some of the broad strokes of the paint to simplify. Okay, and I got this other texture here. This is pretty cool. I'm just gonna go ahead and duplicate it and actually just use this section of it to introduce, and probably put this on like a overlay or something, and maybe even desaturate just a tad bit, just so that I don't like completely kill the original colors that I had in the first layer, because I really like kind of what I had here. And more or less this is just gonna act as like an undertone, so to speak. Just go ahead and crop this so it kind of dials down the memory a little bit, and I'm just gonna smudge this around. I'm just using the simple smudge brush to get some of these tones and stuff going, and I'm gonna compress these two and just kind of smudge some things around. Alright, now let's get started with the actual painting. I'm gonna just think in shape first, and that's kind of the thing I'm gonna go for right now, is just pure shape. And I just really want to see what kind of composition and and structure that I can create. And oh yeah, not to mention for this theme, I'm still gonna go with the whole for the whole monkey apes kind of deal. I really liked kind of the painting that I did last time, so I really want to just kind of develop some more characters based around this kind of like this topic. And I'm just using the broad side of the brush just to kind of paint in the forms. And then we're just going to actually get started with just some understructure or underlay kind of details. I'm just going to think about just the overall forms here, but mainly the just the shadow details, like where the shadow details of my character would be, And I typically I don't always work like this. This is just something that I'm just trying out here. And I just want to kind of see if there's a different result, you know, working this way and just kind of getting a different feel. You know, if I need to, I will bring in some photo textures just to help kind of beef up my sketch. But for the most part, this might just kind of maintain as is. Just want to get in some more of these, just some of these darker shapes. Whether they're like shadows, graphic shadows, or, you know, just design details that are generally darker. Okay, now I have kind of a good starting point for a sketch. And again, this is more of a sketch, less of like a full-on rendering. So I do want to keep the looseness in mind, and that's really what I'm trying to go for. I definitely want to think loose, but I still want to be, you know, fairly accurate with kind of my overall sketch here. Kind of got this going on, and I'm gonna go back and forth from my background here, just so that I can actually, you know, kind of toggle back and forth. And I'm thinking of having kind of this like nice darker background for the setting, just to really punch out the character. Maybe it's darker here or something. I kind of like how it's dark up against this yellow here, this like ground plane. Kind of makes it nice, makes it feel nice and like moody. That's what I really like. Maybe we can even go punchier. Now whether it's going to be like, you know, some sort of you know, plants or something like that, I'm going to keep it fairly ambiguous, just to kind of help me, you know, just block in just the values. But in terms of actually making it something, you know, very, very clear, I'm just going to go a little bit more abstract at this phase until I kind of have a good feel for just my overall value structure, because that's kind of the thing that I want to make sure that I solidify before, you know, before we continue. It's kind of cool because now I have these nice tones that I can play with that are already kind of solidifying a nice kind of base, a nice kind of sort of lighting scenario for me. Alright, now let's do this. Okay, now I'm going to use this and then start to think about just a little bit of color. But more importantly, I'm going to start blocking in just some design details. Maybe something here, maybe some sort of armor. Maybe this one's like wearing the same sort of like armor that I had in my previous character. Maybe this guy actually has like some sort of like axe or something. Or like axe hammer maybe, or yeah, maybe more of like a kind of more like this axe like type of scenario. Okay, cool. You'll kind of see me go back and forth from this ground here. I'll try to want to like solidify just a little bit of just some direction. Just get just some more of these shapes defined a little bit. Okay, now let's start putting in some of the armor. Let's see here. I'm thinking maybe it might be cool if we added just a little bit of kind of like a slightly more like neutral tone. And I'm just gonna color pick from my background, and this will actually help me solidify just a little bit of color harmony with the figure, just to kind of get things started with just the color. And then for the ape itself, you know, maybe we can have more of like a slightly darker tone. I'm just kind of like playing around here, seeing if this might work. Maybe kind of this nice green. Just kind of off balance it just a little bit. But I definitely like kind of the blues in this background. Now I don't want to like render anything yet. I don't want to get too caught up with just the forms. I just want to start solidifying some of the local colors and values. You know, whether it's like the armor, or just some of these other details here. Again, I always tend to kind of ambiently light it, just because I don't know like how dramatic I want to go with my lighting scenario just yet. So this is just a way for me to kind of always control like kind of where I'm going with my lighting, is by slightly ambiently lighting the situation here, the scenario. Okay, now here's something interesting. I have basically a light against dark, and then I definitely want to push this to be a little bit more lighter. So I'm thinking like maybe we can push it to be just a little bit more brighter towards the back. I'm gonna keep it fairly like brush strokey and loose back there, but I'm definitely kind of going for this more silverback kind of gorilla look here in the tones. And then here, it might be really cool to just kind of go with a little bit more, slightly more silvery value here in the face. If you guys need to ever use reference when you're painting, feel free to do so. You know, whether it's a character, a vehicle, even if it's like, you know, an architecture, you know, you definitely want to have some sort of reference if you're unsure of your subject matter. Just so you can always kind of refer back to, like, okay, what does it look like? You know, there's nothing more frustrating when you feel like you're getting lost with your own piece and you just don't know what to do yet, you know? That stuff always happens to, you know, to all of us. But it's like, how do you get around that? How do you solve, you know, those problems? And I'm using the values here from my background just to kind of help. I'm gonna drop the nose down just a little bit. I just felt like it was getting a little too high. Even the mouth, I think the mouth can be a bit lower. Kind of give it slightly more of a grin, like an angry, more of a, he's kind of more not smiling, but a little bit more pissed off. If you need to, you can just draw in some of the features too. You know, sometimes I always kind of like sketch in really lightly, like what I need to draw. And something that I always remembered was one of my favorite concept artists or painters, Craig Mullins, would always say, you know, always change up your brush. You know, it'll force you to think about things differently, because when you change your brush, you effectively think about a different problem to solve. So when in doubt, you know, go ahead and switch your brush around, just to kind of get things moving. And I really love that philosophy, because it really kind of forces you to, you know, kind of move around your painting, and instead of like trying to noodle or focus on just like one aspect and like beating your painting to death, it really helps to kind of like, you know, just kind of move things around a little bit. Go for like a little bit more of an actual distinct hairline up here of some sort. You know, gorillas always have kind of these little ears on the side. And again, I'm just thinking like maybe the armor can come down here or something. Now this is in shadow, so I don't think we'll see so much of the armor, the details on the armor here, in my opinion. But I definitely want to still consider, you know, all the stuff that's in here. And I'm gonna continue to paint at a distance because I don't want to get too caught up into the details of like my image. I just want to look at the overall image and kind of see, like, you know, what am I really saying, or what am I really doing with the photo, or with the image here. You know, how does it communicate? That's really the biggest thing for me. I really like how the underpainting of this is working out. It's pretty cool. Alright, so let's go ahead and merge this, and I'll save this out. So we have these kind of available. And I'm thinking, like, it might be kind of cool if the character had some sort of, like, you know, medieval type armor. I don't know if that looks good, or if I should just go with like normal fur. Maybe I'll just go with like a little bit more normal fur here of something. Okay, I have this side here, which it's getting a little lost, meaning like I can't quite see the edge, so I'm gonna just create a little bit of selection and just make a mask, just so I can get that nice edge of the armor to really punch out. Maybe this is where I can actually have an opportunity for some like armor here. Maybe this might be some cool detail. Remember, like, the colors I'm putting in is more of a local color, and I haven't quite like put in any like crazy highlights or anything, so I'm putting in the local color first, and then I'm solidifying the overall shadow value of this thing. So that's all I'm really trying to do here. Alright, let's put in some of this stuff here. Just some like just some descriptions of, like, you know, how this actually looks. You know, if this is like the fur or something, maybe I can have just a little bit of indication of like fur. But more importantly, it's just going to be all through just the basic shape of it all, and how it interacts with, just like if it was kind of being ambiently lit, you know? We got like the knuckles of the gorilla. I'm gonna draw something right here just to kind of represent that. Anything I don't need, I'm gonna erase away using like a texture eraser or something with a little bit more tooth, but not necessarily completely clean edge, because I still want that like nice painterly look. Oh, another thing, I want to talk to you guys about the pattern stamp tool. The pattern stamp tool is freaking awesome. So when I imported an image like this, right? Let's say I have something like this. What you can do is you can actually create a separate file image or window. And if I like this as a pattern, or I like this as a texture, I can actually go to edit and go into define pattern, like just like that. And what this gives me, it gives me the opportunity to actually paint with that pattern. So meaning, if I go under my clone stamp and down to my pattern tool, and I go to this little window right here, it basically uploaded that texture, and I can actually paint with that texture. You see how I'm doing that? So this is a really, really cool trick. If you haven't checked this out, or you haven't seen me done this before, definitely check this out and try this out on your own. This is a really cool way to kind of get some nice color, but also have some really neat, color variation within your pattern. Because then as I'm painting, I'm actually getting all these crazy colors, right? And I can put on impressionist mode, and I can get these nice like variations of colors right here. And it's really, really helpful when you're doing when you need just a little bit of color and stuff. Thinking about putting a strap here. Just felt too empty, on the arm for some reason. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a strap here and maybe just use the pattern stamp. And I'm toggling back and forth from this thing, so that's why you'll notice I'm getting these little accents or these little colors. Whenever they pop up, I'm basically toggling by pressing S, and I have it to a hotkey. Look at all that nice color. It's pretty nuts. I'm gonna just expand this armor just a little bit. I feel like it's a little shallow for some reason. I feel like it might be kind of cool if we added just a little bit more to this thing. Just had some sort of armor that kind of wraps around the back of the head a little bit to give it just a bit more protection. But just something so that it doesn't feel like, complete emptiness. Now I've just collected a bunch of textures. Some of it's, majority of it's kind of what I've created from the internet. Some from my old paintings and textures and stuff like that. But definitely try to create your own, whether it's a texture you found, and try to change it up. And try to find interesting ways of utilizing it. Again, I haven't really done my lighting yet. Just kind of just kind of painting this as if it's being ambiently lit. So definitely keep that in mind, guys. I'm definitely painting this with the intention that it's just ambiently being lit. Actually, if that's the case, then a lot of this stuff will probably get a little bit more knocked down. Alright, now let's start putting some design details. A little bit more design. Maybe I can have kind of that scaling here. I think I avoided, putting in some of these details in the beginning because I just wanted to see how everything looked. But now that, it's starting to slowly come together, I have a better judgment in terms of like how it's going to generally look as a whole. That's why it's always kind of like, put something in as a placeholder and then refer back to it. So that way we can see how it's going to all come together, Okay, let's add a little bit more, maybe just some like armor padding or something here. I feel like it's a bit simple in terms of like the amount of details that this guy has. Again, I'm just going to ambiently light it, just show that there's a little bit of some sort of like, belt or something here. And I know it's medieval, but like I always wondered, like, would it look silly if I put a little sword? It looks so it looks so like it looks so retarded. I don't know how I feel about that, man. I'll go ahead and try to put like maybe a little sword here. It's weird. You don't think like, apes or something would use swords. I mean, they seem like really like brutal type creatures, That looks kind of silly. Okay, I'm not going to do that. No, it's not cool. It would make sense if it was a human and they're going to use two hands, but they're kind of like badass gorillas, dude. Like, these guys probably can punch out a character and they'll die. So, in that case, just put more armor. So I think like this thing is a lot more appropriate having like a battle axe or something. But let's definitely make this a bit more battle axey. Right now it kind of looks like a fireman axe. I'm gonna expand it just a tad bit. Let's just go ahead and I'm going to grab the top of this and I'm going to stretch it up. And again, notice how like I'm still being fairly vague with my designs. It's not like completely solidified in the sense that like all the details are spelled out, but it's just still kind of like shoulder pad, you know, some sort of like leg padding or something. You know, nothing's really detailed yet or spelled out per se. It's all just kind of an indication of some sort of detail. Kind of like this whole scaly look. So I'm going to use this as part of my little detail pass. Might be kind of cool. The only thing is you have to draw out all these individual scales. And then once you draw it out, and we have to paint all of them because they're all going to have a slightly different value. It's not going to be just this like detail and that's it, but they're all going to have kind of their own like value per se. So if I have something like that, maybe I'm going to put this on darken. Let's go ahead and save this out. Maybe it's probably going to have just some sort of like darker kind of look to it. Maybe give it a little bit of a blue or something. Why it's blue? I'm just going to switch it up. I don't know, maybe the justification is like it's reflecting, or I don't know. It's just something that I just don't want it to be a warmer tone. So that's kind of my bullshit logic for that. Now I'm kind of running into this like weird issue here. This is where like it's so nice to have that background separated because I'm kind of running across the whole, you know, the back leg here is now kind of getting lost with the background. So what does that mean? What do we do? Well, it basically means that like in this scenario, I'm gonna have to do one of two things. I'm gonna have to either lighten the leg or I'm gonna lighten background. But since I kind of want this nice dramatic effect, I think I'm going to lighten the background. At least lighten that portion of the background, just to help alleviate it. Otherwise it kind of, you know, it kind of doesn't make sense for us to just, you know, lighten the leg because it doesn't have that, you know, dramatic vibe to our overall you know, effect of this particular design. So here, let's go with something a little bit more broad, like a broad brush. Let's just kind of bring back some of these tones. And maybe just even some of the yellows here. It's kind of cool. Like a deep yellow. Definitely want to be careful because this leg here is light. And that's dark. So how do we do that? And it's such a tricky balance because we have to kind of go back and forth and strategically just kind of give this a little pocket of light, you know, without completely obliterating everything. I mean, I guess what we can do is we can really lighten this area and just put a little sliver of light here, just so we understand there's an edge there, and at least our eye can kind of make up the difference of like, okay, there's kind of a foot back there, and then there's kind of this more neutral tone, because I think this thing doesn't really help. This like gray is kind of the same tone as kind of the gorilla itself, so it doesn't really help pop it as much. Kind of definitely liking this more bluish tone. It's pretty sweet. When it really comes down to it, though, I'll definitely solidify, you know, the lighting scenario. Just so it's not questionable, but definitely kind of want to get something going first, so that we have something to just kind of implement when we finalize. Okay, go to my little handy tool here, just to help add some more values, some more like just color information. And notice how this is going to get lighter. Now this is going to get lost in the background. So when I do that, I have to be very strategic and say, okay, well, this probably all has to get darkened down just to help with the read of it. So I'm going to definitely darken this stuff down just a little bit. Okay, cool. All right. Let's go ahead and save this out. And I'm constantly saving versions so that, you know, we can always refer back to anything that we're kind of unsure about. Even this here, let's save this out. Oh, I think it might be cool if we added in that kind of like waterfall kind of vibe from my previous painting. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, there was an environment that I did that had all these waterfalls. I definitely kind of like the aesthetic of that. It just created like a really interesting atmosphere. And I just thought like there's a lot of opportunity to kind of play with the lighting and the staging of everything. You know, maybe like this area here got really, really gestural. And maybe this is what's going to give it a nice soft edge down here. But most importantly, it's going to give us this nice, like, you know, light against dark. And again, now this is a sketch, so I definitely don't want to treat this like it's a final rendering. This is something that I would do for fun, or it's, you know, for whether it's for a client, you know, or if it's for just as an idea, just to kind of get a feel. Maybe strategically brighten this up here. Something like that. That's kind of cool. Alright, so we still got this guy, and now I'm going to start adding in and start kind of polishing up some of these little details here. But my focal point is going to be generally around the face, so I definitely want to focus on that the most. And as I mentioned, like all this stuff here, these little bits of details, I'm going to simplify just by picking the value around it and just kind of individually painting it in, so that we kind of get that nice scale look without having it just be the lines that spell it out, but more or less the actual form itself is going to be spelling out what it's doing. And it kind of gives it a nice, like, you know, painterly quality to it, so it's not just, you know, it's not being held up by line work per se, but it's being more it's being descriptive in terms of like form and what you call planes. And planes of what I understand it is basically kind of like this, like different sides that showcase, you know, generally value. And that's kind of what I'm doing here, is I'm trying to spell out these different planes. At first I was like, planes? I'm like, what the hell? I'm not drawing airplanes. And then someone actually, you know, kind of taught me what that meant, and it completely changed my whole world, my whole perception of like, oh, that's what it means to like paint a plane. It's one of those things that I was never taught in art school, mainly because I studied industrial design, so it's fairly foreign to me. But now that I've gotten, you know, more and more familiar with that, now I can actually look at it with that sort of you know, concept or principle in mind, and kind of like, you know, and understand it more on a principle level, you know. Now I'm going to change the brush here, because again, I don't want to over render this, but I just want to have just have a lot of fun with it, and also be a bit more expressive, and not feel like, you know, everything has to be spelled out. And also here I got all of these like textures. Now I'm going to start to zoom in here just a little bit more, and I got all of these like these textures here. use some sort of like pattern brush or some brush with texture there to kind of break it up, just so I can add in a nice visual flair here. And it might be cool to add in like some sort of graphic or something. And this can just be purely decorative. You know, no real surface design, but more just kind of, you know, more graphic. Maybe this part we can get a little bit more form or something there. I don't know if that looks too much. It might look a little funky. I'm gonna take this off. Just kind of an indication here of this stuff. I'm going to add it just a little bit over here, but I don't want to get too overly detailed with the stuff, because that's kind of not the main point of the image. I'm gonna zoom in here, and you can kind of see that working from far away, we got a lot of nice painterly qualities. We just get a little indication of that eye, but for the most part, I'm going to leave it kind of vague as is. Kind of liked how this was a little bit more ambiguous here. This is where I'm going to go in with my smudge brush and just kind of lose some of the edges here, just to kind of help break it up. Otherwise, it's gonna become a really stiff and detailed painting. I definitely don't want that. I want this to kind of have its own like cool, sketchy vibe to it. Okay, maybe we can add just a little bit more detail here on the fur. Maybe just a little bit more on the head shape. And maybe just a little bit on the hands too. Maybe just see a little bit of the thumb here on this gorilla. I definitely want to leave it relatively kind of sketchy. Alright, cool. Alright, now this ground here, let's try to like either loosen it up or tighten up some of the areas, because it's looking a little just undefined, really. Okay, maybe we can go to kind of our pattern stamp just to see if we can get some nice colors. And I'm just gonna see if we can create a new layer just to kind of get a little bit of color variation on the ground. I want to see what we can do so it doesn't look kind of like simple and bland. Definitely like what it's doing here to the ground. It's adding like in these weird tones. That's kind of interesting. It's kind of cool. Let's have it so it's like a layer on top. But I kind of want this like looseness for sure. That's kind of cool. Let me see here. Here's some of the older textures here. Oh, there's this one here I totally forgot about. I forgot where I got this from. I think I got it from a part of a painting. I want to say it's from Soroya or Zorn. This probably looks like a Soroya. But I definitely want to utilize just some of those nice, like, really interesting looking textures here. And then maybe what we can do is I can just desaturate this. And let it kind of just come through. Just a little bit. I just want to use just a tiny bit of that flavor. Because again, this stuff is, I'm assuming it's in sunlight. So I definitely want kind of a nice mixture of these tones to seep in, you know? That way, you know, we can really punch out kind of the character. But also kind of justify this whole, like, this kind of darker side of what we have. I'm wondering if it might help if I kind of break this part up too. Maybe we can add like a secondary waterfall or something. I just kind of don't like where that shape was going. It felt a little contrived or just a bit weird. That's kind of cool. Something indicating just some structure back there as a sketch. But let it be loose enough so it can still be a, you know, a fairly descriptive but, you know, kind of loose sketch. Okay, we're starting to kind of get this nice feel of the type of environment that it's in, but again, I don't want to pull away from the main image, which is the ape, which is our character here. So I definitely want a lot of the attention to be here. So any detail, any additional detail, I'm gonna try to keep it within this realm. But the background is just going to act as more of a way to kind of help punch out the information. That's all I'm really going to use it for. You can kind of see the before and after. Maybe we can even get warmer too, just because it's getting kind of like at the peak of that sunlight right here. I'm really just kind of feeling my way through the color tones, but they might be cool if we just got like really warm to the point where it got really saturated, and then it just kind of dropped off into this more desaturated kind of tone here, where it's just kind of this more like you can really feel the light kind of transitioning out. Like something like that. I'll do that and then break it up. It's like I sometimes want to make these perfect gradations using my brushes, but man, it's so hard. It's hard to get those forms. Okay, now it's starting to feel kind of like this sunset warm light. Okay, this is where I'm going to start jumping into a little bit of lighting. And I definitely want kind of this more dramatic vibe here. So I'm going to use an overlay layer, and I'm going to pick a big kind of soft brush and just kind of do this. Just kind of get this nice dramatic flare right up in here. And I like kind of that golden-y looking vibe. It's looking pretty cool. It's looking very like kind of, you know, dramatic Rembrandt-y kind of lighting scenario. Not that I'm a Rembrandt, but you know, definitely has that kind of quality to the lighting that I like. And then It's funny. Rembrandt. It's like, if there's anything, I never want to ever think that I'm anywhere near those masters. I mean, I'd be happy if I was, you know, a small percentage of what Craig Mullins' skill is at. That'd be the dream. Okay, let's delete this. I got some weirdness going on here. Okay. This is where, you know, I can start to help, you know, define some of these edges here. You know, some of this design detail. I kind of still want it to feel like this armored kind of wrist guard per se. And you see kind of how this underpainting really helped in. Kind of, we got like these nice like warm, you know, tones here to really help kind of justify the bounce light or something, but it just really makes the underpainting feel alive, you know. Now we're starting to get into a little bit of lighting. I'm definitely liking where this is going in before. I kind of want to go with more of that dramatic. If we're going to go this dark on the shadows though, like, we have to make sure that it's consistent with the shadows down here, if there are any. Otherwise it's going to feel really disconnected. Especially if we're creating a nice edge here. And also we can probably just brighten up some of this stuff using some of the neutral values here. This blue is pretty nuclear, so I'm actually going to see if we can desaturate that just by color picking. Or you know what I'll do is actually I'll create a color layer on top, and I'll just use a soft brush and just kind of knock some of this bluish tone down a bit, so it's not like this super nuclear color, because it gets a little distracting, you know. Okay, now the ape is kind of like not lit, right? It's lit because of the background, but we don't really feel that the ape is actually being really lit. So this is where I'm actually going to compress this image. Now we're at a certain point, and I'm going to make a selection of this ape here and copy it and I'm gonna brighten up this ape. I'm gonna slightly desaturate it, because as light hits the object, it tends to want to wash out. So that's kind of what I'm trying to create here. It's a really washed out look. And you'll see that I created a mask, and I'm basically just kind of painting in the areas where I kind of want that light to really come through the painting. And where it comes through the most, then I'll definitely punch out just a couple of pockets here and there of light, but for the most part I'll try to downplay it a bit. So we kind of have something like that, right? Okay. Make another copy of it on top, and this is where I'm actually going to do a multiply layer to kind of darken this guy. See how it looks. Kind of want like a really dramatic lighting scenario, especially to punch this guy out. Yeah, that's starting to feel pretty cool. You know, it feels kind of has that like nice dramatic look, but look at the edges here, they're pretty sloppy. So if that's the case, I have to really go back and just kind of touch it up. So a lot of the stuff kind of got a little bit out of hand. So I'm just gonna go and touch up some of the stuff that looks a little messy in my opinion. And in the meantime, as I'm actually doing this, I have an opportunity to really give the ape, or give my character, a little bit of a rim light. You know, just to really help pop out some of these forms. Just to dramatize the scene a bit. But now at least this character kind of looks, you know, visually it starts to kind of have that like slightly more intimidating, you know, lighting scenario. And we can like kind of back it out so it's not so obviously punchy. And then this is where, you know, we can go in and start painting on top of our actual layer on top of everything, just to help clean up some of this edging. To add any detail that we want. Okay, do that. And I'm just gonna kind of go here and just start to kind of refine my silhouette just a little bit. If anything, we can actually take the opportunity to really punch out a lighting scenario of our character. We're adding in just a little bit of a nice kind of bounce light or some sort. Okay. Adding any other details that we're missing. But I kind of like the sketchiness, the sketchy quality of what we have here. Kind of the way the light actually kind of wraps around our character is actually kind of nice. Kind of has a nice, like, slight theatrical feel. Just gonna add just a little bit more. And anything else that's like kind of like more you know, that needs refinement, I'm just gonna do it on this top, very top layer. Because this is where, you know, I'm gonna take the time to kind of refine some of these details. I'm pretty happy with this sketch so far. It's actually not too bad. You know, it can always be a better design, always. It can always have a better story. But for the most part, I definitely like kind of the overall direction of where I went with this. Maybe we can just kind of give it a slight just do something like that. Just kind of simplify. And I like the way this is like washing out and it's looking very simple. And I want to keep that quality. I do not want to lose that quality. It's always easy to over render and, you know, completely beat up a sketch, but in this sense, like, I want to try my best to keep everything as painterly as I can, you know? I should really study some axes because I feel like this is kind of a generic looking axe, and I'm sure for those of you who are watching, you guys have better design ideas for that. But So add in some like ambiguous, you know, paint strokes that kind of fall into, you know, our character here. So it just gives it a little bit of direction. And definitely like kind of this whole golden hour-y kind of vibe here. It's looking pretty close to what I was imagining. Maybe just some like distant objects here, like rock forms or something in the back. This part's really buggy. It's like so simple. I don't know what to put here. Maybe it's like, because everything is looking already fairly ambiguous. Maybe it's just like a tree or something. Maybe some other little waterfalls and stuff in the distance, but yeah, there you go. There you have it. That's pretty much where I'm taking this sketch. Just kind of look back here, see what else is like sticking out like a sore thumb. Maybe all this stuff I'm going to simplify kind of the way the tones are, because it's getting really distracting and a bit noisy, because backgrounds can get a bit noisy if we're not careful, and that's something that I definitely want to be mindful of. Otherwise it'll just kind of go out of control. So these areas out here are going to act more as like soft, very, very soft transitions. Just so our eye can have a little bit of visual play with color, hue, saturation, but also just lighting as well. Notice this other arm doesn't have a little band. So let's definitely add that in. It's most likely going to be not as descriptive just because I have it on the other far arm, but I definitely want to, you know, add it in. So it stays fairly consistent. feel like I'm cheating because I feel like the thing about ape hands is that they actually stand on their, they actually walk on their bare knuckles, and I feel like it's hard to really show how their hand works. You guys probably have a better idea, whoever's watching. Just go ahead and put some more of their structures back here, just so that it's compositionally not as simple as just kind of a it does get kind of noisy easily. Such a hard balance, you know, especially like when you're painting and stuff like this. It's like everything is always kind of a give or take. You know, it's always a balance of shapes or detail. So one general rule of thumb, you know, try it out, see how it looks, put it in, and then erase it if you have to. All right, I'm definitely liking it. It's looking pretty decent. What if we popped it out just a little bit more? And the area I'm mainly focusing on is this area here in the background. What if I just had a little bit of this warm light really seeping up and kind of giving a nice like golden hour-y effect right behind the monkey behind us. That's kind of cool. Put on color dodge mode. Call it a day. Let's kind of see. Let's play around with it just a little bit. I definitely like that because it bumps it up just enough so that it's not too distracting, and that's just kind of the amount that I needed, really. Okay, and I think I'm gonna use a color dodge mode to really help bump up some of this stuff here, the details here. If not color dodge mode, then I'm just gonna go ahead and paint it. Maybe this thing actually has some sort of knuckle casing. All right, just to mess with this a little bit more, add just a little bit of kind of reflective light. Just a little bit. Put in some obvious hair strands, you know? Maybe some are catching light. Alright guys, well, that pretty much does it. This is basically kind of my process for sketching this kind of stuff. I hope you guys found it useful and enjoyable to watch, and I'll see you guys next time, and thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. Thanks.